Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Bioactive Live Q&A. I'm your host, Mark from MI Beneficials, and we have a nice pre-recorded episode coming from Bryan, Rubber Ducky Isopods, one of the co-hosts of the show, and we'd be remiss not to mention Kevin from OK Calyx, who won't be with us tonight, but shared a great video last week on building soil and how we can use soil as an analogy for our own mental health. Highly recommend watching episode 51 if you haven't already. And tonight we have episode 52. So we're taking this thing full circle. It's kind of the 1-year anniversary of the recorded YouTube show. Although we've been doing this now for well over 2 years via Instagram Live. It's definitely been a lot more meaningful and a lot more rewatchable here on YouTube because of the quality of the stream and because we've been putting in some work, getting some guests on to talk about their expertise. So we really appreciate everyone's support through this last year. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to hit that like button. It really means a lot, helps us to keep spreading the word. And this month here in February, we're focusing a lot on mental health and wellness, treating your body right, treating your mind right, getting right yourself. And today's episode comes from Bryan. It's another one of his Our Future submissions. Matt Powers puts on his conference Our Future in the wintertime. And then in the fall time, he's got Our Soil, which will be coming back around next year. This episode, courtesy of Bryan, talks about autophagy, which is a way of taking care of your body by allowing yourself to fast for a certain period of time. You allow your cells to start kind of consuming themselves. And at first, they will start to consume waste product. They'll start to consume the negative built up things that are in them. And what you end up with is a healthier, clearer mind and a healthier body. And those two things go together so hand in hand, as Bryan will kind of explain. But it's truly an amazing story that Bryan has, because he comes from kind of a similar background to the rest of us, where, through your 20s and 30s, you generally don't see any purpose in taking care of your temple, which is your body. We all kind of get that feeling like we're invincible, and it doesn't kind of kick us in the butt until we start running into other issues. A lot of the time, it's mental health issues that really wake us up to how important the microbiome is in our body and how important diet is and how it's correlated to our mental wellness. So this is a great episode 52, coming to you from Bryan at Rubber Ducky Isopods. Hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you after the episode.
What is up, our future nerds? Happy Sunday to you. This is the third time that I've been asked to speak with the Our Future crew. So many bright-minded people, so many mentors that you guys are learning from this week that I've personally learned from. I've even taken some of their classes, spent my own money, a lot of time on the Google searches and YouTube searches trying to figure out this stuff for myself. Happy to pass it on to you guys. So if you haven't seen the last two, the first one that I did at around this time last year was Overcoming Adversity with Bioactive Entrepreneurship. Just real quick, but between you and me, it's really hard, I think, for the average person, unless they're going to be well-funded, to even get into the cannabis space on a commercial level. So that's why we're big proponents of being a home grower. We talk about that on a variety of different podcasts throughout the years, about how that's kind of the last person left to kind of say, like, the last little, like, fuck you to the man of being a farmer and being regenerative and learning about living soil and how it affects the environment, how we can grow things to actually have medicine as food as medicine, as well as cannabis as medicine. And then I finished out last year with the Our Soil conference. And again, just kind of understanding a variety of different things. That talk was Beneath the Cap, a decade of fungal insights. So more and more people are starting to understand how I'm able to achieve a lot of this stuff in the isopod world. And most of it, to be honest, is just from the background in cannabis farming. So if you understand how to build a soil system one way, you're going to be able to, for the most part, little tweaks and stuff here, you're going to be able to monetize those skill sets in a variety of different industries. So in the early days, like I was saying, you have to have some kind of playbook, and there's so many different ways to kind of go down these different rabbit holes. A lot of stuff is going to be over your head. So I've always talked about that microbial world I first learned from Dr. Lane Ingham, but the person that was able to, I guess, explain it to me, not only from his presentations, but also his first book, Teaming with Microbes, you see right there. I highly recommend, if you've never even heard of this, who's Jeff Lowenfels, I encourage you to spend the $20 and read that book. It's going to change your life. It changed my life, and I'm happy to share with you guys now. When I was talking about our future, especially last year this time, so a year ago, there was something that clicked in me when I started to grow with a living soil and using avocado tech and getting heavier with the oats and the kefir. I really started to notice that microbial world took off. The rove beetles were exploding. The springtails, the red wigglers at that time were taking off. So how is all of this happening? So I started to research a little thing called kefir, and I've been actually taking it for the last 5 years on a daily basis. So adding the nutrients and the trace minerals back into the soil system is extremely important. But what I'm going to talk about today is on the microbial level and how the microbes on this side of things in the stomach are really kind of managed in the same way that a lot of us that are managing living soils are able to take advantage of some of the lactobacillus and some of the earlier things that we were learning about in the natural farming days, the Korean natural farming days, when it was even called that back then. So how do we take it to the next level? Well, for me, it's autophagy. And this is something that I know not everybody watches all of the talks and everything. So if you're brand new to what I'm all about growing cannabis as medicine and then finding ways to heal yourself. And so autophagy literally breaks down to self-eating. And that's what I'm going to get into today. So when I was, this would have been around like 2005, I got into poker. There's a guy named Chris Moneymaker, that was his real name, and he entered into a Poker Stars tournament for maybe like $100. And he ended up winning that, so he got an entry into a tournament that cost $10,000. And in that entry of the $10,000, he actually won the entire World Series of Poker. So it was like the Cinderella story, all this kind of stuff, right? And to equate that, I guess it would be like if you were some high school football player, quarterback, and you were somehow able to take yourself all the way to like the Super Bowl. And so when all of that was going on, a book was recommended to me about a story called The Story of Success, Outliers. And it's something that I've been trying to get more and more people to read. And I think the ones that I'm able to connect with, they start to see what I'm talking about. So the real gist of this book is that it takes about 10,000 hours to find success in something, to really master something. It takes 10,000 hours. And when I was breaking that down in my younger days, I was like, wow, man, that's really, about 416.7 days. So being a stoner, I was like, all right, it takes about 420 days to get, really good at something, to be able to usually monetize some kind of skill set. So if I wanted to play the violin, right, I got to study it for 10,000 hours. If I wanted to be an artist, well, I need to be painting for 10,000 hours. If I want to get into business, well, I need to be understanding business for 10,000 hours. Basketball, football, all of this stuff, growing cannabis, growing food as medicine. The reality is that there's some kind of special mark around that 10,000 hours. And so learning about all of this stuff, he gives fantastic information about how Bill Gates was able to achieve this with some of the insights of the book. The Beatles were able to achieve this by playing constantly and getting those 10,000 hours. And then luck seems to kind of trickle in when people are working this hard. The other thing I took away from the Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell is the author of this book, is that apparently the wealthy people in society, which I never saw growing up, I grew up decently poor, they speak to their children constantly. And that's something that, at least for me, I saw insight. So when I was growing up, it seemed like the TV was kind of raising me, or at least at certain points of the hours and stuff, where the wealthy individuals in this book, they seem to go out of their way to make sure that their kids are constantly doing something. They're talking to them. So there's something about how many words your children see when they're younger. And I just thought that was and wanted to highlight a small little tidbit. The book has a fantastic viewpoint from a variety of different ways. But the two things I took away from it were obviously the 10,000 hours. So really working your ass off for a while. I wrote this down. It takes 1,258 hour work days to achieve 10,000 hours. So it's no small task. It really is climbing Mount Everest. But the reality is that it seems like no matter what you are doing, if you really are dedicated to something that strongly, you're going to find success. And so in those early days, I started to really focus on poker, and then eventually to online poker. And there was a site called Bodog at the time. It's changed its name now to Bovada. But during this time, this was something that where I was able to get some money onto a site, start to play, start to get my skill sets up a little bit. And then at night I would go, and there was a place called the Toad Tavern here in Denver, Colorado, where we could basically play in like this underground poker club. And this was going on for years and years. So I would play in this at night, and then during the day I would sit here and try to play on Bodog and try to get better in my skill sets. And I realized that the guys that were more focused on online play were just able to see so many different hands and so many different situations, and becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable is something that I had to learn to do in poker. And so to get to the level that I wanted to get at, I started to take shortcuts so that I could be playing poker as long as possible. I actually took that 10,000 hours maybe a little too far in life, and my health started to deteriorate from that. Since I was playing in these tournaments, the years were going by. I was doing decently well. Never enough, honestly, to make enough money to where I didn't need to hustle some cannabis or to work as a bartender here in town. But I was still doing well enough that it was starting to, some people were starting to notice that the skill sets were starting to change. And so they would come over to my apartment. Usually you only have about 5 minutes per hour in multi-table tournaments to go and have a break. So I would run downstairs in my apartment. I would raid and eat like pretzels and animal crackers and all these things that I thought would potentially be healthy because it wasn't necessarily filled with sugar or filled with fats. And so I was just constantly drinking water and eating carbohydrates. And the stress of playing online poker for profit as the years went by started to take a toll on me because the players got better and better. And so around like 2012, 2014, that's when I was deep into not really paying attention to anything but poker. I was really just going out at night and trying to play poker as much during the day. Those were my two focus points in life. And my health started to deteriorate without me really even noticing, to be honest. I think I was just so caught up in that kind of lifestyle, what certain things and certain aspects when you do make a living in certain ways, what that brings to you. And so my health seriously started to deteriorate, and I just wasn't really noticing. So when I was at the Toad Tavern, everybody is drinking, having a good time. I'm smoking cannabis. And then as the nights would progress, I noticed obviously that usually midnight and on, I have a little bit more of an edge because these people are getting, at least some of them, we're getting seriously drunk playing for, a couple $100s on the table. So how do I kind of take this to the next level? Well, I thought, well, obviously I'm not going to drink. And so late at night, to kind of give you a pickup, I was eating a lot of sugar at the time, peanut butter M&Ms. But I thought for whatever reason, that I was still being healthier because I wasn't drinking as much. Usually drinking and gambling kind of go hand in hand. And I started to develop something called a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And a lot of that comes from eating a lot of sugar. So I should probably break that down a little bit. So a lot of people think that a fatty liver is only going to come from alcohol. And the reality is that most of us, especially Americans in our diets, when we have a little bit of a belly, we have at least the beginning stages of this disease. And so if you're wondering if you have a fatty liver, especially for men, if you have a little bit of a gut, you have a fatty liver. And that's going to cascade and almost have a domino effect for people that are constantly on the go and burning their adrenals. Is that this starts to not only burn out the adrenals, but now we're also just building up the fat on top of the liver, so that everything starts to become sluggish. And so, how do we as Americans fix this? We turn to what at least the marketing companies call energy drinks. And I have been on these forever, it felt like. I mean, we were doing the 4-hour energy drinks. For a while they were doing Red Bulls. I mean, the stuff tastes terrible. And to be honest, I still do the synergy drinks that you can find at Costco. But the reality is that all of these things are stimulants. It's not an energy whatsoever. I'm learning here at 42 and beyond that the reality of human beings and the way that we regenerate is that we actually get our energy from something called mitochondria. So this is on a whole nother level for a whole nother day. But if you think that you're going to eat some food and get energy, or with a sluggish body system, sluggish gallbladder, sluggish liver, usually your body's not going to be able to break that down. And so it just becomes heavier and heavier for you. And life is a little bit harder every day. So you start to rely more and more on these stimulants to feel like you have energy. The reality is that especially caffeine just masks tiredness. So if you're exhausted, you drink an energy drink, you're still exhausted. It's just the body doesn't feel it on the same levels that it does for maybe an hour or two, depending on the ones you drink. Supposedly, if you have the stronger ones like Monster energy drinks and some of the other ones that are out there, some of those can really drive the heart rate and kind of give you anxiety. And it's just there's too many stimulants in those drinks. So definitely be cautious of using stimulants as your energy source. So a couple of years are going by during this. Life is pretty good, to be honest, if I'm thinking about it on paper. We're selling cannabis, we're going around, we're having kind of a bit of a nightlife, enjoying the nightlife. This thing called Beta Club was here, and Beta Nightclub was here in Denver. That was super popular back then. So just being in this dude name was Bradley Ruler. He's one of the owners back in the day. And he played poker. So I was able to, through these networks, find nightlife as well. And it was detrimental to my health. Looking back, I wish I would have actually never met some of the nightlife, well-established nightlife people here in town. Because once they give you the passcode to the VIP and everything, you just want to go every weekend. And so that's what I was doing. I was constantly trying to study poker and get better at poker, doing daily activities, going to the gym, thinking that I'm being healthy. And then at night, barely sleeping and kind of repeating the whole thing over and over again, constantly with the stimulants. And one of the guys that was the poker dealers at the time in the little underground game at the Toad Tavern, he just straight up asked me, and I'll never forget, he literally said, "Damn, Bryan, are you okay? You look terrible, man." And then kind of paused for just a little bit and said, "Just saying." And the way that he said it, and the way he kind of tilted his head at me, I'll never forget that. I don't think I had even honestly looked at myself in the mirror in probably a year or so. I mean, that just wasn't the best time in my life, even though monetary wise, it seemed like everything again was okay on paper. Bills were paid. I felt like I was enjoying the nightlife. It is fun for a while to go in and do those things. But the toll that it was taking was starting to be noticed by basically strangers. I mean, people that I would see maybe once or twice a week. As the months and years were going by, they really started to notice the toll that it was taking on me. And again, I was barely learning how this stuff kind of worked, and I started to learn about the adrenal gland. I started to read books about this and why are you always exhausted. One of the books was I'm tired of being tired. And so I was trying to understand all of this stuff, and the adrenal glands are sitting right on top of the kidneys, and when those are burned out, that's why you usually see people that are just they're on edge, and that was me. If I took a bad beat in poker, or if I got caught off in traffic, I would just feel this rage. And that's usually from adrenal gland exhaustion. It's just your body is just so far gone that is just the way that you seem to respond to like the littlest thing of frustration. Your body just physically can't handle it in any kind of calm manner. And so then I started to learn even more about trace minerals. And that's really what I also want to get in today is that the majority of us, I promise you, the same way we talk about our plants have deficiencies, we have so many different deficiencies. And most of us are at least suffering from potassium and magnesium deficiencies, B1 deficiencies, B5, B12 deficiencies. A lot of that stuff is, again, how you're going to get the nutrients to make these mitochondria. And that's the real secret. If you've never heard of this stuff, and I'm not the smartest guy to explain it all to you, but I encourage you to go down the rabbit hole of people that are able to really dive deep into how the mitochondria affect energy into the body. It's amazing. And the reality is that if you stay on top of it, you're focused on eating very nutrient-dense foods, and you start to work out. That's something that I haven't done in years, of just now getting back into as well. But the mitochondria, after a few weeks to a month, it does take a month, it does take a little bit of time, just like anything in life, I think. Anything good, anyway. As you start to, the body starts to see, like, okay, this guy's not going to stop going to the gym every day. We need to build larger and larger mitochondria so we can maintain this new energy demand. And that's how a lot of us, if we're truly thinking long term, as a cannabis farmer, we want to be able to be as healthy as we can, going into the later years of life. The reality is that we need to focus on that mitochondria. And so if that is something brand new to you, I encourage you to check that out. I can't speak enough on it. And if you guys like this kind of content, please let me know, because I'd be happy to go deeper into this. It's just a real basic overview. But if you've never heard of the adrenal glands, you're probably burnt down on them if you're having a lot of sleep issues and that kind of stuff. For me, I noticed, I've had 2 kids recently. My wife and I are running our businesses. There's just so much going on that food wasn't even recently wasn't necessarily at the forefront for me. A lot of times it's a lot easier to feed our family of 6 with a couple pizzas or something like that. And I found that over a year or so, that all of a sudden my body fat percentages started to go up. And I started to really think about, how am I going to be able to fix this if I don't have enough time to be able to do this? And so then I started to learn about something that is called visceral fat. And so when we're getting into fasting, we're getting into, again, autophagy. A lot of people get frustrated with this. The first time that I even did this, intermittent fasting and staying focused on it, I got frustrated with it because I didn't understand how the body gets rid of fat. And so I started to study that a little bit more around like 2022, 2023. And I realized that the body's able to remove a lot of this stuff as long as we obviously stop feeding it, especially feeding it junk food, and allowing itself to self-heal. And so being focused on that kind of stuff and going deeper into fasting and going down those levels and eventually prolonged fasting, you are able to get rid of a lot of inflammation, a lot of the issues that you have. But that's not going to come until you get rid of something called visceral fat. And again, that's the fat that is around the organs. So you might look like the gentleman on the left-hand side, but have more visceral fat than the person on the right-hand side. And so that is something to think about as well. If your diet is shit, and yet you still look like you don't have a gut or anything, more than likely your visceral fat is off the charts. And so when you get into autophagy, that is actually the fat percentage that you want to focus on. You can get yourself a $100, maybe $150 little fancy scale, and it'll actually do the full visceral fat reading for you roughly. So you can sit there every week or so, every 2 weeks, and start to gauge this. And that will give you the incentive to keep going, because you can see the visceral fat start to drop off pretty dramatically. It takes a while, but as the weeks and months are going by and you're doing this, you'll start to see the visceral fat is dropping off. Once the body has started to remove all of that fat from the organs, that's when the belly fat starts to come off as well. So just be patient with this kind of stuff. Same thing that I've been talking about for a long time. Trust the process. The human body, for whatever reason, knows how to heal itself for the most part. And so as long as we give it these tools to be able to do it and the time to heal itself, you're going to be able to feel just so much better. I cannot describe to you how much I feel, how much better I feel compared to 2019, 2020, 2021. I mean, I vividly remember thinking that COVID was going to be, it was like February of 2020, I believe. And I thought that the world was going to end. And I remember eating moon pies because that used to make me feel good. And just the drain of all of that kind of stuff that ends up being on the body of just constantly consuming sugar to feel better is something that I personally had to learn, that I'm not going to use food when I feel a certain way to feel better about situations. So this is when I started to learn more about the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Um, you know, I wouldn't think most of you are at the level of it being some kind of cirrhosis. But if you have a horrific diet and you drink all the time, I would caution you to really look at that lifestyle. The inflammation that is going to cause seems to build up over time. I've personally felt it. Chronic inflammation is something that I think a lot of, especially men, just learn to deal with. So if you're constantly in pain, you're getting up and your shoulders are hurting, your lower back is hurting, those are nutrient deficiencies as well as usually gallbladder issues. So, you know, if you talk to Western physicians, they even tried to do this to my wife when she was having major issues. They want to remove the gallbladder. But the gallbladder is something that actually gives bile to the liver. It actually stores the liver. So the liver's making the bile. I believe it's about 80-90% of that bile is constantly recycled within the body. So it's extremely important that doesn't start to slow down or become a sludge. Because once that starts to happen, that's when people feel all kinds of pain. You can start to build up and get the little kidney stones. You can get gallstones. You can get these stones in a variety of ways, and most of the time that's coming from not drinking enough water, usually constantly eating dairy, and then consuming a high level of fructose, basically, like just the candies, all of the things that you see at the candy aisle. All of that stuff starts to add up and really start to put fat on the liver. And so people, I think, are in pain and they have no real way to figure out what is causing it. Because most of us, even when we go to seek help, no one ever tells us to our face that, hey, it's your diet. You need to really think about what you're doing here if you do want to feel better in life. And so with this kind of stuff, especially in the early stages, most of the stuff is talking about heart healthy this. You need to, everything needs to be low fat. They talk about grains and all of this stuff. I've personally moved away from all of that, especially if I'm trying to get rid of a lot, the last little bit, I guess, of this chronic inflammation that I have. As I'm going through it, you can feel it start to kind of almost move through the body. I don't know if you've ever had the flu. When you're recovering from the flu, you can kind of like feel it in your joints and stuff. You just feel achy. That's what's going to happen when you first get into fasting and deeper into the autophagy and prolonged fasting that will really take autophagy to the next level, is you'll kind of feel that achiness. But again, that's in the back of your mind. That's another way to know that you're being regenerative here. You are taking care of yourself. The body is going in there and cleaning itself. And that's something that is only going to be achieved through my research, is more on a high-fat diet. So everything that you've been taught about fat makes you fat, the reality is sugar makes you fat. Carbohydrates make you fat. Refined foods make you fat. Eating shitty eggs and shitty milk, all that kind of stuff makes you fat. So the money, if you have the ability, should be spent on starting to find healthier foods, grass-fed, grass-finished meats. Um, if you've never experienced it before, it probably seems like a waste of money. But once you start to actually, eat pasture-raised eggs that are organic, there's something called choline in those eggs. There's cholesterol in those eggs, especially for men. If you want to start to feel like a man again, start to eat eggs and bacon, the stuff that you saw your grandfather eat. There's probably more of the stuff that you need to get back to. The steak and the eggs and all that kind of stuff and the bacon is actually the foods that are going to heal you the most when you are suffering from this. And one of the main ways to fix that is from the eggs with the choline. You want those high fats. It's just a game changer. And so through all of this stuff, I don't think I ever really got the message from playing poker. I was clicking. I don't know if you've ever seen poker, but you have to constantly be clicking. If you're playing more than one table, you're just constantly clicking the mouse, making decisions, high stress decisions. And so over time, that constant clicking without enough of nutrient dense foods, I basically lost. There's like a sheath within that hand structure, and when that goes away, you start to get an unbelievable amount of pain. I started to feel this in both hands. I have a ganglion cyst. I don't know if you guys can see that there. Still to this day, it's gone down dramatically. I feel like I probably still have another year for it to completely go away. But in my opinion, this is from chronic inflammation. I don't think there's, at least from the Western medical viewpoint, there's a reason why ganglion cysts come about. There's a variety of different ways that science says could potentially come, but there's no concrete way to understand where it came from. And in my opinion, I think it's coming from just being constant inflammation, just constant, where the body's just under struggle. And that shows up eventually into the rheumatoid arthritis, which I am currently battling. Something else that happened during this time was something called trigger fingers. So this finger, for a long time, would get locked up like this. And it would scare me because then I would have to take it and kind of pop it back like that. From what I understand, that's some of the deeper part of my hand itself, the fascia. I was using Graston last year to kind of break all of that down, but I was still feeling a lot of pain. And that's when, again, I started to go even deeper into autophagy. And I cannot express to you guys enough that when you start to do well in business and things are going well for yourself, or decently well, and you feel a little bit better, and you want to wake up the next day and build your business, feeling shitty is one of the worst things that's going to accompany all that. You're going to be exhausted, especially the first years if you want to be an entrepreneur. Your body is going to potentially break down on you because you're just constantly working. And so these are the gifts that I hope that you guys will kind of slow down and realize that if you are constantly on the computer, you need to take breaks. If you're constantly clicking, maybe buy this mouse is a left-handed mouse so that it doesn't affect the same way as like the traditional mouse. So there's a variety of different ways to start to kind of take care of yourself, even though you want to work long hours on the computer. You need to remember to go outside and think about these kind of things. Graston is a fantastic thing if you guys are suffering from hand issues. And I have a lot of people reach out to me in the DMs because I've talked about this on a few podcasts. But if you have trigger finger, I assure you that if you start to get Graston and get into intermittent fasting and eventually build up to fasting for autophagy, you can self-heal yourself from trigger finger and you don't have to have surgery. I'm living proof. I don't have to do anything. So again, autophagy, self-eating. How do we take it to the next level? In my opinion, it's probably hearing this word a few times and then eventually Googling it and going down your own little rabbit hole. This had been talked about. I don't know if the word autophagy was thrown around, I think around in the 50s or 60s. But it was accredited to the Japanese cell biologist Yoshinori Osumi, I believe is how you say that, discovered autophagy and was awarded the 2016 Nobel Prize. And I think there's something special to that because in 2016, from a scientific viewpoint, I think from a health viewpoint, that is, last week, and no one has really ever talked about it. I don't necessarily see people outside of certain communities, people like us that are into regenerative things that want to work on Mother Earth. I think she's able to obviously take care of herself, and I believe that that microbial world within our stomach system would be able to take care of itself as well, as long as we stop constantly snacking and feeding. So that's going to when I was playing poker in the early days too, they were talking about how you had to constantly be feeding the brain and eating all of these fruits and all this kind of stuff, which also has sugars. And the reality that I've found is that you can either run your body on carbohydrates and sugars, where you're going to need to eat, or you're going to feel like shit. Or there's another fuel source that nobody talks about, and it's called ketones. And if you ever heard anybody on keto diet, you don't even want to listen to them because they just are holding their breath to be able to talk to you about this kind of stuff. But ketones is basically a fuel source that your body prefers, the brain prefers, the heart prefers. And so when people hear, oh man, you haven't eaten all day, how are you able to achieve that? Well, the reality is that I'm not I'm not consuming food for the 16 hours, the 24 hours, the 48 hours, the 72 hours. But my body is still eating because it's moved over to ketones. And once it's switched over to ketones, now it's breaking down the fat. And again, it's going to break down the visceral fat first because the fat around the organs is what eventually will speed up our demise. And so it gets rid of that first, and then it starts to take the fat off the body, especially around the midsection. So if you're into, especially, you feel a certain way, especially in January, I always kind of just feel like, man, I want to do this, I want to do that, and hopefully I'll succeed in 25% of those goals at best, but you're so ambitious in the early part of the year that I hope you guys at least realize that if you do have a little bit of a gut, and you have some free time on your hands, well, in this world, at least with ketones, we're rich. We have excess amount of money within our gut. And so one of the easiest ways to get healthy is to start to spend that money by not eating and not snacking. So at best, you're eating maybe 2 meals per day. And I'll get into that here in a second. But if you want to get deeper into autophagy, this is something that is relatively brand new. And again, just kind of understanding this kind of stuff, I think you're at the forefront for the average person on how to heal themselves. Autophagy, I wanted to kind of point this out, especially for people that have adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout. That was definitely me. Usually you're also going to be extremely potassium and magnesium deficient when you're going through this. And so autophagy, the process by which a cell digests and recycles various molecules and organelles in its cytoplasm, is critical for maintaining homeostasis and for helping cells survive low nutrient conditions. So if you are tired all of the time, you are drinking 2-3 energy drinks just to get through the day. Your kids are constantly asking you to play and stuff on the weekends, and you just never feel like you have enough energy. You are low nutrient deficient. Your body is basically running on E constantly. And so because of that, one of the easiest ways to start to fix that, where you will feel it within days, is to dive deeper into this autophagy. It's like the body's able to kind of flatline everything for a little bit and then reset, and then everything starts to get fixed. And again, all of this is free. You just do it by, understanding how the human body works a little bit better than the average person. That's why there's no money in this. It's because what would you charge for? Information, in my opinion, especially this kind of information, to help other human beings with health problems. This even helps with mental health problems. Autophagy is on a whole nother level of something that needs to be in your vocabulary. So again, for me, a lot of the issues, the the trigger finger, the chronic inflammation, the rheumatoid arthritis that really started to develop from all of that stuff is from chronic inflammation. It's from me dislocating my shoulder and not getting it healed properly, popping out ACL and MCLs and not getting it done properly. I never realized that the body holds on to all of that stuff for potentially years or a lifetime. And it might not necessarily put that pain trigger where that pain is actually coming from. So there's Chinese medicine that even says, if your left hand is hurting, there's a point in where you would massage and work on the right hand side. I don't know enough about that to say these things, but what I'm bringing that up for is that there's so much to the human body that I think a lot of Western beliefs are kind of like dismiss a lot of this stuff as that the body could heal itself. That food should actually be thy medicine. You don't necessarily have all of these issues. Run to a Western doctor. They don't even ask you about your diet or anything. They just want to give you, symptom treat you. And that's what I've personally seen throughout my life, even with my children. As the reality is they want to put you on prednisone or some kind of cortisol shot. And those are steroids. And they usually mess up the microbiome in the gut. Usually cause more issues than when you first went in and sat down with these Western physicians. So if I got hurt, if my children got hurt, Western medicine is fantastic taking care of that stuff. As far as food is medicine and using the mind and trying to heal thyself, I think it is so far behind because it could care less about it because there's no way to make money on it. So you as some of us, even the man of the household, we have to understand this kind of stuff so that we could teach this to our children, teach it to our wife, so that we could heal ourselves and heal each other simply by just taking some time off, learning to relax, learning not to constantly eat just because we feel like it or because we're bored. If you notice here too, I suffered for a long time with the chronic bags under the eyes. If you start to even see the purpling of the bags underneath the eyes, you have insulin problems. You're constantly probably, your body's telling on you basically that you're eating too much sugar. And more than likely, you're also deficient in vitamin D. So if you don't go outside and you don't really do anything to exercise, more than likely, when you wake up one day and you look in the mirror, this is where all this is stemming from. It's all coming back to chronic inflammation. Again, autophagy is how we fix it. This is something that I put a couple slides in here because I want you to remember this word. I have so many people ask me at the end of a podcast, what was that word you were talking about? Autophagy, self-eating, fasting. If you Google that stuff, you'll find it out there. So the average American sometimes thinks, okay, I'll balance something out. I eat a terrible thing, but I'll have a salad. But I had a bunch of ranch dressing or blue cheese dressing with a ton of sugar in there. And so, especially with the way that I grew up, green beans had lard and bacon, and my grandma called that vegetables. And so when I was eating my vegetables, I was eating bacon and lard. And I don't necessarily think that's also as healthy as it should be. So moving forward, I think that microbial life is so important that we need to really hesitate on some of these newer foods that are being introduced. There's a lot of fake meats out there that are supposedly trying to get pushed on the public. A lot of the soy products, the almond milks and stuff. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I personally know that the soy is detrimental to the male body. It's just basically creates too much estrogen. And so when all of that stuff starts to happen, the male has microbial problems, and that's where you get all of these different stomach issues, and they pop up in so many different ways. For me, it was even SIBO. I had basically the microbes were in the wrong area. They should have been more in the large intestine, they were in the small intestines. And so again, autophagy fixes all of these things. I bet you could name a variety of inner problems, and autophagy is going to at least help relieve some of that. So these are the early days of what I would like to joke as my, this was my stomach. I was constantly eating sugar, especially during the heyday of online poker with my friends coming over. We just always enjoyed eating candy. I mean, especially in the early days, we were making pot brownies and cookies, and cannabis had just been legalized for the most part, as long as you had a card in the early days. And so my diet was mostly probably meat every now and then, very few vegetables, and constant carbs and sugar. Things are starting to build up so much that I'm getting sluggish. The bile wasn't even moving correctly. I had severe pain in basically where the gallbladder would be. It was just kind of a nightmare for me as a human being, and it was all self-inflicted. So with taking it to the next level and understanding the microbial world as your house, when you start to fast, the body starts to notice that, okay, wait a minute here. We're not constantly eating, and we've actually made a decision where we're not going to eat for this hour. And then it starts to notice 2 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours have gone by. And so the body starts to prime itself for the fact that, wow, okay, maybe we're not going to get nutrition anymore. Or at least we're not going to always know that we're going to be fed every few hours. And so once those glycogen stores have been burned up by the body eventually flips over to ketones. And that's when the body starts to eat the fat within the body. And as it's breaking down that fat, it actually turns into carbon dioxide. And so for a lot of you, myself included, that kind of used to dismiss people that were supposedly saying, one of the fastest ways to also get healthy and to lose weight is to get into all of these kind of different rhythmic breathings and things that I still to this day don't really understand. There's ways to breathe. It's kind of like a yogi that supposedly helps with losing weight. And for me, that always sounded so bullshit, far-fetched. But now understanding how the body actually gets rid of fat through carbon dioxide, exhaling, it makes a lot of sense. And so priming the body, getting it ready to understand that we're not going to be feeding it anymore, it starts to notice these things, and it starts to notice, hey, we're going to start cleaning up around here if we have a little more time. And so once that starts to happen, the body starts to basically break down old folded proteins. A lot of these proteins are just kind of sitting there. A lot of the sluggishness of your body, all of that stuff starts to improve because things are being cleaned up. It is a literal spring cleaning, if you will, of that microbial home within your stomach. And as that this starts to happen, everybody is coming in, working together in this microbial world within your stomach to break this stuff down. Once this has happened, the body kind of gives this signal. I believe it's called ghrelin, and that is the hunger signal. And when that isn't given off, that is why the body is able to start to eat itself without you feeling like a horrible. Let me try to think a second here how I want to explain this, because when I'm on ketones, you would think that if I hadn't eaten for 12 hours, 24 hours, that I would feel a certain way. My body would feel a certain way. Usually you feel just horrific. You have headaches and all that kind of stuff. If you are going through that, just realize that that is your body really cleaning out the mess. And you needed that more than you thought. And then once the body does take that switch over to the ketones, you are going to feel better than you probably have ever imagined before. As the weeks and months are going by, that brain fog that some of us have gotten used to, the body aches and all that kind of stuff within the joints, all of that starts to go away. Like I had mentioned before, you even feel it starting to be removed from the body like a flu when it's removing all of that kind of stuff. And it's just another way for you to kind of realize and feel for yourself that autophagy is working. The body is in a symbiotic relationship, that we are fasting now. It is time to start to clean this up so that we can add new proteins and start to rebuild this microbial world within this stomach. So the fasting benefits, this is a slide that I think is really important if you've never seen this before. If you're constantly eating, right? So if I had like a breakfast at 8 a.m. and then I got to, let's say I had a 9 to 5 job, then I got to work, I probably have another little snack at 10, then I'm allowed to go eat lunch for 30 minutes or an hour. I'm eating again. I probably then have another little snack around 2 or 3 before I drive home in traffic. Some people even eat in their cars on the way home. So the body is never resting unless we are asleep. And so if we are constantly feeding ourselves, we are constantly pushing insulin and our cortisol levels. And especially for men, that is a horrific thing to constantly be doing. That is where you get, your body even starts to balance this out with so much sugar. You're even going to get estrogen production. And that's why when you do get the gut and that starts to be enough, the body starts to give you man boobs. It starts to steal a lot of the muscle from your legs and your calves. So when the body is basically trying to fight off a fatty liver and organs that have visceral fat all over them, those are one of the signs of that. And I don't think enough men kind of pay attention to their own health to realize when these things are happening. And so we're just constantly eating. We think we need to eat for fuel to go and accomplish all of these things that we're trying to accomplish. But the reality that I'm hopefully showing you guys today is it's the exact opposite. The less we eat, the more we're going to achieve. And so when we get into this, I'd like to highlight here, hopefully you guys can kind of see this, my little marker right there. The 16-hour mark to the 18-hour mark is where most people agree that the human body starts to kick into autophagy. So if you're sleeping for 8 hours and you're waking up and you're eating breakfast almost immediately, like I had mentioned in those examples, your body is never hitting autophagy. So you are literally never cleaning your house. There is no spring cleaning. There is no winter where you're trying to declutter things out, metaphorically speaking, within your body. And so this is why this is such a benefit for people that have never tried this. Once they understand that the body's going to get rid of the visceral fat first, you're going to be handing out the business cards of this philosophy here because it works so well. And so when you go through all of this, the reality is again, all of the old stuff is broken down. The body removes it, and it's basically replaced by everything that is brand new. So one of the best analogies that I've ever heard, and that's why I used the analogy of the home today for you guys, is that it's like having a home that you've owned for a long time, and it's starting to decay and break down. But the reality is you don't have enough money to fix that house, right? You don't have the money to go buy the pills and the lotions and all the things that symptom treat. So how do we fix it? Well, we work from the inside out, and we start to build up from autophagy from 16 hours on, and we start to break down everything. And then the new microbes over here start to move in. So we actually get our own brand new diverse microbial world just from autophagy. The body will start to make its own microbial world from this. We're able to improve on this with fermented foods. So sauerkraut, my personal favorite is kefir. I can't speak enough on that. If you don't like all of the cabbage and sauerkrauts and kombuchas and all of the things that have kind of almost like a acquired taste to them, kefir is usually something that people eventually will begin to crave because of how well it makes them feel. Everyone in my family, including my young daughter, is into kefir because of the way that it makes them feel. I mean, the whole body, it's just a game changer for that stuff. So imagine having a brand new house from this. You have a brand new diversity protecting that house. You have microbes that are stronger. You have that mitochondria, especially from working out now as well as doing this, so that things are getting stronger month after month. And then eventually, year after year, you can eventually improve this to where you actually look better probably in your 40s or your 30s than you did in your 20s and your teens, because you understand how the body works. And the body self rejuvenates roughly every 7 years. So it's doing this naturally anyway. So this is just another way that you're able to kind of keep up house cleaning and go from a rundown shack to one of the more desired homes in the neighborhood just by being patient and focusing on fasting for real. So learning to only eat when you're hungry was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. Even in the early days still when kind of going out with friends, a lot of us wouldn't even go out to about 10 p.m. And some of us would want to eat and then go drink. So lifestyle changes probably have to happen. Socializing things would have to change for you to be able to achieve this, especially when it comes to sleep, because the body is breaking all of this down during sleep. So if we're working out and we're doing all these things, but we're up all night long, living that kind of like socializing lifestyle, you're not really doing anything. You're just kind of spinning your wheels. And so I had to learn to cease all food consumption by 8 p.m. So that's roughly my goal, unless sometimes, you're out. If I have family members coming to town or something, I'm not trying to be ridiculous about it. But for the most part, when I'm at home, I stop eating at 8 p.m. I've been doing that for years. What that's going to do is now you're going to start to break this down in the later hours of the evening so that when you do start to fall asleep, your body's not breaking down food as well as trying to signal all of the different things that you need to fall asleep. And when the body is digesting food, especially the shit foods, the late night foods that you eat usually when you're out drinking, that's why you, or at least some of us, we can't sleep at night because our body is too sensitive to this kind of stuff. It's just constantly moving and needing to work. So our brain's not going to be able to shut off as easily. So moving forward with that, once I'm at 8 p.m., I now want to at least go to 8 a.m. So when I wake up in the morning, let's say a lot of times I'm up at 5 in the morning, I still need to wait 3 hours before I'm going to consume something. And for some people at first, those 3 hours might be a little bit difficult the first day or two because your body's so used to carbs and sugars. If your body's ever going to go through the dreaded headaches that you've heard about potentially with fasting, that's when that usually happens. But if you stay on top of this and you're more proactive with trying to plan this out, before you get into what I'm showing you on the slide, you stay focused on potassium, magnesium. You could eat like an avocado a day and more than likely get enough of the potassium and magnesium to start the fasting process. So the first week, again, we're going for breakfast. We're going to push that for 12 hours, so 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then the second week, we're going to want to start to push that so that we get to at least 9 a.m. I think for a lot of us that are really wanting to do this because our body hurts, push it that extra hour. Every hour when we're getting into fasting makes a dramatic difference. So if you can distract yourself, oh man, I'm feeling really hungry, and you can go run some errands or something where you just don't have time to eat, that extra hour or two is going to make a world of difference in how quickly this starts to work for you and how your body starts to adapt to this where it doesn't feel like it needs to constantly be eating. The third week, I'm going to start to push that until about noon. That's when you're hitting that 16-hour fast. I think for a lot of people, that's where I would kind of stop, especially if you're brand new to this. So now you're doing what's more known as intermittent fasting. So you're stop eating at 8 p.m. and now you're not eating till 12 noon. That's giving you that 16-hour mark. Now, every hour that you push past that is fantastic. But remember, if you want to eat, like the body might be saying at this point, hey, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Don't deprive yourself at that point. Your body's still kind of figuring out how all of this shit works. And so you never want to deprive yourself of food. You do want to try to deprive yourself of as much sugar and carbohydrates as you can, because the lower the carbohydrates are, the faster the body gets into ketosis and is burning these ketones. In the fourth week, this is when we've always kind of talked about riding the wave of autophagy. I would say about a month, maybe 2 months, depending on where you are and where your diet has been. This is when you're really going to start to notice, like, hey, I don't necessarily feel hungry in the morning anymore. Like, I do feel like I could easily just start to have 2 meals a day. Well, especially for men, only eating 2 meals a day simply by calorie consumption, you're going to start losing weight just from that alone. And then when the more we're able to maybe have lunch and then not have a snack and then have dinner at 6 p.m., so we had another 6-hour window, that 6-hour window matters so much as well. So when we do need to eat, go ahead, do that, especially noon, 1 o'clock, whatever. Hopefully eat a more nutritionally dense meal. And then from there, try to push it to that 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, no longer than 8 o'clock, and then you cease eating. From that point forward, it's probably going to take a few months. I would almost say maybe close to 6 months before you can start to do what's known as prolonged fasting. That's going to be for another day. But the autophagy, especially the early points, you can easily start to hit that at the 16-hour mark, and then you just start to keep pushing it. So eventually you'll get to what's known as OMAD, or 1 meal a day, if you're really pushing this. And at first that's going to sound probably almost too good to be true, or maybe it sounds kind of goofy that you would be able to survive on 1 meal a day. But again, if you're burning off all of this fat, your body's been eating constantly all day anyway. It just hasn't been also having to break down the new food that you've been feeding it. And so this is something that I think, hope maybe a year from now, please give me your feedback on this kind of stuff. If you guys want to keep going down this rabbit hole of regenerative farming, regenerative food and medicine, and how do you kind of do all of that, I've been talking about since 2015. Then I would say since roughly 2022, we've been talking about how to monetize our skill sets. And so now that we've been able to monetize things and life is a little bit better, how do we find real happiness and joy in life? In my opinion, that's going to come from focusing on the fact that health is wealth. It doesn't do anybody any good to have a fat pocketbook, but not be able to move your finger and have it constantly lock on you and feel like, because especially in the early days of the ganglion cyst, I didn't feel strong enough to hold my daughter in my arms. I would usually have to sit down on the couch or something until I was able to fix these things. And so all of these little nuances that the 20-year-olds, maybe the early 30-year-olds have never felt. I am now 42 years old. I have not taken care of my body whatsoever for the majority of my life. And I am telling you now that this is a game changer. This is free. This is something that you will never have to pay for. All you got to do is maybe educate yourself a little bit more. This is a gift that I personally think is something that is a gift of the gift of health, the gift of joy. Like, if you've forgotten how good it feels, if your brain is constantly feeling a certain way, you have depression. A lot of this stuff is going to come from adrenal gland burnout. You have probably bile buildup, and that is where a lot of that depression is coming from. A lot of that laziness is coming from. It's not the fact that you're lazy, it's just that you've stopped taking care of your body. There's not enough mitochondria production, and so now you're not able to keep up with, I think, what it actually takes to live in society in 2025. So our future people, this is something, again, that is very special to me, that Matt Powers would even ask me to be a part of this. This is, again, my third talk, so I'm obviously doing something right. I continue to try to kind of push my talks in different directions. I know all of these people are on such a different level, almost on just leap years. Some of them are leap years ahead of me on what I could be able to educate you on regenerative farming. But I do know from my own experience here that regenerative microbial life, and the fact that we can do this not only in our cannabis soil systems, but do it for ourselves within our own microbial gut, is, again, something that I hope you guys will focus on for 2025. Find real health. If you have any kind of stomach issue, this is going to change your life. And if it's been something that is constantly causing you aching and fatigue, that, my friend, is chronic inflammation, and this is one fantastic way to get rid of it. So until next time, I know I'll be seeing you guys later today. We'll be on the entrepreneurship panel, But remember, to be an entrepreneur, you're the only one. There's nobody checking on you when you get to work in the morning. There's nobody checking on if you stayed late in the evenings. So you're going to run yourself ragged, and you need to focus on your health. Otherwise, it's going to be a double-edged sword where maybe you had your health, but you didn't have any money. And so now you've been chasing money, and now your health has deteriorated whatsoever. You have to find that balance in life to have real freedom. And waking up every morning and being able to pick your day and have a little extra money to eat nutritionally dense foods is something that I want to give you as the gift, at least for my little talk here in 2025. So I will see you guys in the future. And again, this is something that I know all of you can strive to find success in. And remember that nobody is going to usually talk about this because it's free, and nobody ever wants to usually educate and give freely. There's always usually some kind of monetary gain behind it. And so autophagy, the people that are into autophagy in my world, it seems like are the same that are into regenerative farming, using food as medicine, growing cannabis as medicine, is that we all want to share this information freely with one another because it was given to us freely and it has changed our lives. All right, I'll see you guys soon.
Really appreciated that information coming from Bryan. It breaks it down to us laymen in a very palatable way. The more sugar and processed crap that you feed into your body, the more messed up your internals get, and the organs inside of your body are talking directly with your brain, and so the effects that it can have on your mental health are truly expansive. And through intermittent fasting that I've been playing with recently, I've definitely been able to improve my mental clarity. But I've also been able to reduce the amount of anxiety, the amount of tired grogginess that I feel. I've been able to alleviate the amount of caffeine that I need to intake each day, which has its own effects on anxiety and other issues. And I haven't gotten to the point of doing full 24 and 48-hour fasts, but for me, it's baby steps to build up my confidence and to prove to myself that these things actually work. So hopefully, what you guys gathered from Bryan's share is that we can do this in baby steps. Just start taking a look and doing some honest inventory of the activities and the substances that you partake, especially when it comes to your diet. So really important to understand what it is that's going on inside our bodies and why it's so important to eat right and to feel right. And cannabis, as we've talked about before, I think Jordan from Growcast said it really well. Cannabis is a gateway drug. It is a gateway drug in the respect that it's a gateway. When you start learning how to grow cannabis successfully, you start thinking about growing other things in your life. And teamed with the rising costs of groceries and inflation and all this other stuff that stresses us out on a daily basis, we start to see the value in growing our own food, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a nutrient density standpoint. We do all this work to grow the best, cleanest medicine without any additives, and not being able to trust organic facilities and certifications as a real organic source of food should really make us all wake up to the idea of growing our own in our backyard, where we have control over what's being sprayed and added to the soil and added to the food to make sure that it's shelf stable and preserves. This is not necessarily a call for action, but it's definitely a call for starting to think about action. Companion planting with cannabis doesn't necessarily mean you have to grow one or the other. I currently live in a backyard that's only about a quarter acre, and we companion plant all summer long so that we can feed our family some good nutrient dense food. We can also provide ourselves with clean, nutrient dense medicine. So hope you guys got a lot from this episode. I definitely did. I have felt so much better practicing intermittent fasting and allowing my body to clean itself out a little bit. I feel like I look better. I can definitely think clearer, and I have a lot less anxiety, just in general from these simple practices of just eating during the waking day. Don't eat when it's dark, kind of like Tim Hammond said when he came on talking about quantum biology. From a molecular standpoint, from the mitochondrial standpoint, you can improve your health by simply eating in the bounds of the day, like we were supposed to, like our caveman ancestors did. So, hope you guys gather some good information from this. Next week, we're coming back with Ganja Sana, who's going to be talking about mental health, wellness, and plant medicine as it pertains to cannabis and beyond. She's a yoga instructor. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's uh, she's presented at Camp Compost several times. I've personally been to her yoga. And I love being able to put all of these things together so that we can have a better internal health, better mental health. On February 28th, we've got Rick Easley coming on, longtime supporter and listener of the show, a huge proponent in electroculture. He's going to be coming on to share his information and knowledge on electroculture and how we can elevate our gardens even further using those practices. And then the following week on March 7th, we've got a special guest, William Padilla Brown, coming on. He's going to be talking about truffles. He's spent a good chunk of the last 10 years doing research, traveling the world, figuring out how to cultivate truffles. And he's going to be sharing that information with us, not only on cultivation, but on the health effects and the things that we can get from truffles other than a delicious food and taste. So we can't wait to have you guys come back. Again, we're going back live. We're done with these pre-recorded episodes for now, and we're real invigorated and ready to rock and roll coming into March. Hope you guys have a great week. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of your bodies, take care of your minds. Love you.